following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Al Blumkin from the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm here with my usual co-host on Friday afternoons, David Nemec from who's in California, and the founder of this network, Ralph Tyko. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, I hope you guys are getting a little bit better weather than here. I was just mentioning to Ralph that it's here in Brooklyn, New York, it's 31 degrees, and the wind chill factor is 19. So I hope you guys are enjoying a little bit warmer weather than we are here.
Well, no sun here today, but certainly warmer.
Yeah. What, is it 60 or something like that? That's cold by you.
It is. It's about 60, 67, 68.
Oh, wow.
What part of Southern California are you living in?
South of San Francisco, Ralph, in a place called Laguna Woods.
Oh, okay. South of San Francisco. I felt you were down
south of L.A. South of L.A.
Oh, okay.
It's about
60
miles south of L.A.
San Francisco a little bit.
Yeah, it's in Orange County.
Yeah. Has it been a big adjustment? Are you happy there?
Huge. I really can't say that I like Southern California nearly as well as Northern California. I wish we were back there. I don't know if we're going to be able to make it back anytime soon, but I'd certainly like to get up that way or closer to that way.
Well, we'll get together and have a nice baseball chat when you do.
That'd be great. I look forward to it.
In the meantime, do you come up to visit? When you come up to visit, we can do
that. We haven't as yet. We're planning to sometime this spring. I actually haven't been in San Francisco or Oakland since we moved to Long Island in 2007. So the last time I saw San Francisco or Oakland was 2007. But yeah, I do miss parts of it a lot. Golden Gate Park in particular, great place.
Oh yeah, it's a terrific area of the country. I was telling Alan that I'm just sorry that he didn't relocate years ago, suffering these winters.
Yeah, the biggest mistake I ever made was not relocating after I retired.
Yeah.
I had the ability to do so. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we look back and, things work out the way they work out. Hey, guys.
Okay. How long have you been where you are, Ralph?
In 1966, the Air Force sent me out here. I had enlisted because Vietnam was going on, and I was lucky enough to be stationed in Travis Air Force Base between Sacramento and San Francisco. And when I got out, I had the option of going back, and I set up roots in California, Sacramento first, then moved to the East Bay, and have lived here for like 50 years already.
Wow.
But I'm a New Yorker at heart. You can take the boy out of New York, but you can't take New York out of the boy.
New York out of the boy.
Okay, let's get started. Okay, David, I understand you have a new book coming out.
I do.
Okay, would you like to talk about
it? Sure, I'd love to. It's called The Incredible Baseball Quiz Book. It's patterned a bit after my earlier quiz books. I started writing quiz books in
This is the one that I proofed, right?
Yeah, you proofread it. You did an excellent job. I want to thank you again.
Thank you. Well, my pleasure.
A terrific amount of help you gave me on it, and you're appropriately credited. And it was a fun book to do. I hadn't done a quiz book since the early 90s, and this one I decided to, do more than just ask a question and give an answer. I also, when I could, incorporated an anecdote about a player or a team, stuff I thought was little known and the readers would appreciate. So there weren't as many questions as there are in the normal quiz book, but there's, I think, a lot more information and a lot more incentive for readers who are trivia players to do more than just trivia. I began doing just trivia. I wasn't really all that interested in history beyond the 19th century, and didn't even know how much there was to find, But once I started doing the trivia books, I really got caught up in it, and it's led to, a wonderful amount of research that I was able to do and produce other books too on baseball that I really enjoyed writing.
David, may I ask you about the research process? Before computers, of course, it was much more tedious. How do you do your research now? And are there things out there that haven't yet come to the computer that help you in your research? I certainly have been helped by the computer. BaseballRef.com has information I couldn't even dream of obtaining before the computer world came into existence. But there are shortcomings even in Baseball Reference, particularly when you start going to the minor league material. There are corrections that I can find, and I try to submit them, and so far they haven't been made. But there's no more fun you can have doing research than going to a library, to me, and poring over old, what did they call them? The tapes.
Microfilm?
The roller or something?
Microfilm.
The microfilm, the microfiche. Yeah, I loved when I was in San Francisco, going to the San Francisco library and taking out a couple of tapes or, microfilms from the 1880s and just going back and hiding in the stacks of the desk and spending the entire day there. And,
nice.
Finding stuff I never imagined was even obtainable. And much of that still is not in the computer. You can't find it in Baseball Ref. You can find stats in Baseball Ref, but you can't find the anecdotal material about the players that you can from old newspapers and from on microfilm.
Right.
Yeah, I had a couple of small experiences like that because when I was preparing my presentation I did 30 years ago on players who missed time in the majors because they were in the military during the Korean War, and Mace played 34 games, and that season, before I went in, I went in there to find out if he had missed any, and the answer was no. And I found out some other details. You're going through those sporting news, like Branch Rickey was furious at Gus Bell because he brought his wife and his baby son to training camp in 1952, and he traded Bell in one of probably the worst deal he ever made after that season to Cincinnati, and his the infant son was Buddy. 66 years ago. And
that's a good story.
Yeah, and I found out some other stuff because I was looking at sporting news that used to cover baseball in its entirety back then. So you find stuff that you really, really don't. Can't find, and as David just mentioned, in BaseballReference.com. I use that when I do posts on Facebook just to check, make sure I got the numbers right, the dates right. But that's basically all it gives you. By the way, just in case you guys forgot, today is the 90th birthday of Don Marcy.
Wow.
Yeah,
Don Marcy.
The Paul Newman lookalike.
Don Marcy played a big part in a book that changed my life. It was the flipping card book of baseball.
Yeah, I have that. I've had that for years. Yeah.
He was featured in that.
Yeah.
And that's where I learned how Topps signed their players and it encouraged me to write a letter to Cy Berger and ask him if I could be the West Coast representative. And I got to spend the 80s and 90s signing players in the minor leagues for Topps to obligate them to big league ball cards, baseball cards, when and if they made the majors. And I got to spend all my summers driving around the Northwest League and the California League, and it was great. So that book really inspired me to get into that business. And he, if I remember right, am I right about him being in that book, Al?
Who? Morse? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He wasn't a good-looking guy.
No, but you certainly had a good job. Oh,
yeah.
That's unbelievable. That's a great experience.
Yeah, the one why they used that in that book.
I did. They actually paid me to do it, which was
I would almost pay them to.
Absolutely, I would. I mean, I had access to clubhouses. I got to meet my boyhood heroes who were managing and coaching then. Got to meet players before they were affected by being rich. And I don't think very many people who acquire wealth, it doesn't change them in some way.
Yeah.
So
one of the great ones is they used put up a 1958 Topps card of Yogi Berra. And the guy put down, "This is my favorite picture of Yogi. Paul Newman, eat your heart out."
Yes.
Well,
he did the Morse card, if I remember correctly, in conjunction with Darlesky. And how they basically looked like a pair of undertakers.
They were really linked together almost immediately when they joined Cleveland.
Yeah, and
David, you could talk about how they really anchored, if you will, that 54 Cleveland
they both had incredible rookie years.
Yeah, both of them had great years.
Yeah.
And it was almost fortunate for Cleveland because Bob Fellow was on the downhill side of it. But what starting pitching? Lemon,
Early Wynn, Mike Garcia, and Art Halleman. His last good year.
We had 5 starters. But you're right, the core of the staff was Wynn, Garcia, and Lemon. They did not have really strong 4th starter. Feller had not a bad year, and Houdeman's was the surprise in the fact that I think he won in double figures.
15
Narleski and Mossy were huge contributors. We shouldn't forget
out of the bullpen either. I think the spot started a little bit once in a while.
Now Mossy had started till he got to Detroit. They traded both of them to Detroit, I think, for Billy Martin.
Yeah.
After 1958, I think it was, and then Narleski came down with off trouble, and Mossy became a starter for the Tigers for the next few years.
Well, did you ever run into any players?
Genius.
Yeah. Did you ever run into any players, Ralph, when you were doing the signing for cards who did not want to sign?
I'll tell you a story about the worst jerk I ever met in my life. And I'm sitting in a clubhouse in Stockton, California, and I'm talking to a guy named Bobby Matchmer. He's on my Facebook, and he's been on this show. We've reminisced about this. He was managing Stockton, and he was a guy, I know David will tell you that he's one of those who hit a home run in his first major league at-bat with the Angels. However, as he told me, his biggest regret was not getting a Topps card, ever, because he was never on the 40-man roster, one thing or another. He didn't have a Topps card, and we're sitting and talking about that, and I was there to see one player and one player only, and it was Gary Sheffield. And Sheffield, so we're waiting for him to come into the clubhouse, and Sheffield comes in as a 20-year-old kid out of Tampa, Dwight Gooden's nephew, right, with all the talent in the world. And as he comes in, Matchmer introduces us. He says, "Gary, I'd like you to meet Ralph Tyko.
I'm on the phone,
He's pardon me? Oh,
no, I'm sorry. That was my wife just called me.
Anyway, he says he's here to sign you to a Topps contract. If you'd like, you talk about it." And Sheffield responds, "Fuck him," and walks away. Doesn't even shake my hand, doesn't even say anything, but just fuck him, and walks away. And Matchmer's standing there. He's his manager, right? And I don't know if you know the dynamics of minor league managers and star players and what have you. And we just looked at each other as he walks away. And I don't remember if I ever got to talk to him after that. I don't think I did. I think that was about it with Sheffield. Doesn't acknowledge, it didn't make eye contact with either of us. And I thought that was a pretty low-class thing. Others have refused, but they just, oh, no, I don't, my agent said don't sign, where in actuality, everybody signs the same contract. It's agreed upon with the union and all that. And I could certainly understand not signing. There were a few people that did that over the course of my 15 years doing it, but none so abruptly as Sheffield. And we just shook our heads at the humanity and what was going on.
Well, Topps
that was kind of the way.
Topps went after everybody because of what happened to them with Maury Wills.
And that's exactly it. And Cy Berger, who wrote the preface to that book that we talked about, the flipping card book, talked about that. And I realized that it doesn't take a baseball scout to do the job that I was going to get, because, as you said, Al, everybody in the minors signed a contract or was offered a contract, so no one was snubbed. And I had the ability to communicate, and I had the passion for the game so that I could communicate with the coaches and the managers in the minors, and it worked out beautifully. But you asked the question, and Sheffield was the all-time jerk as far as I'm concerned, and the way he showed respect, excuse me, showed lack of respect for the game throughout his career.
He didn't last very long with anybody he played with.
No, but he
moved around an awful lot.
But he put up numbers that, certainly in Hall of Fame range.
Hall of Fame numbers, absolutely.
Yeah, I think he alienated an awful lot of people. And you're right, he didn't stick with anybody very long. But
could he ever hit? There was no question.
What did these guys who signed? You know, like you said, you went through the entire roster, signed everybody, and tried to sign everybody.
We give.
But did you all get the same money?
$5 check. We give them a $5 check, and actually by the 90s, the union got involved, so there were two $5 checks. If a player, so that Topps could use pictures of people who weren't in the union. For a while, if you weren't in the union, you couldn't get a Topps card. But that there was the thing in the 90s with the
strike breakers, yeah.
Right. So
yeah.
they negotiated a new deal with Topps, and but you get $5 in the minors for signing the contract. When I left Topps in the mid-90s, if you were up all year, as you'd get like $85,000 just from Topps.
Wow.
That's
really because I remember in 1954 they signed Ted Williams, who was exclusive Topps for 5 years before he went to Flair, and he was getting paid the magnificent sum of $400 a year.
Right. Well, most of the players, and he was one of the exceptions that they made a deal with.
They were getting like $150 a year back then.
Yeah. Incredible. And most times they'd offer the players gifts from a catalog.
Yeah.
So Topps got a cut of the gifts. Topps worked it both ways. The players would get a gift that would be worth more than the money that they get, and Topps would pass it on, and they'd get the wholesale price of the gift. So they made out better if they took the money. But now it's incredible. The union has come in, and players get almost as much in salary, minimum salary, as they get from companies like Topps, the bat companies, the
shoe companies.
Yeah, the shoe companies.
So George Case could talk about that.
Absolutely. Oh. Absolutely. It's become a marketing, it's become a business. I mean,
yeah.
How many T-shirts can you sell at your shop? Caps, 12 different uniform styles to buy from. And it has become capitalism personified.
Yeah, David, we get back to your book.
Yeah, it's an amazing story, though, Ralph. I mean, I didn't know a lot of this. As a kid, everybody collected cards, but
the only thing I knew was because David, when you and I were collecting way back when, there's Topps and Bowman. And Mantle was Bowman. There's no Mantle 54 Topps or Mantle 55 Topps. As kids, we would spend quarters and buy all sorts of packs looking for cards like that didn't exist. Now they all exist because they're so many custom cards made. You can get 8 different Mantles from those eras, those 2 years.
Yeah. First year I collected was 1949. Bowman.
You beat me by 2.
and the Bowman set did not have Ted Williams or Joe DiMaggio. It had Musial.
Yeah,
I noticed that.
Musial,
I figured there's something going on here. These guys aren't willing to, go in with the card companies. And I had no idea they were getting paid.
Musial was on Bowman's in 52 and 53, and he wasn't there in 50 and 51, but he was there, and he wasn't on the mainstream. He didn't make a Topps card until the All-Star card in the 58 set, and then he was on, for the remainder of his career.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That was a great set. That was my favorite set of all time, the 58 set. It was so inclusive. It had virtually every player in both leagues, which a lot of time, and it was on like you say, it had Musial, because there were a lot of players that didn't sign.
Yeah, the only one that didn't make the top set that year was Ed Boucher, because he got involved in some,
child molest,
some problems, yeah. And his card was supposed to be number 145, and they pulled that. But there's different. Some of these people who do custom cards, they're a custom card of Boucher.
And that's
with the whole back, the same thing, the number 145 and all of that.
I used to not like custom cards until Mark Weiss made me one of I'm the pitching coach or something like that on the 62 Mets. I've got a picture of me with the background. He did a great job on that. Liked it.
So David, explain your book to them, the innings and all the rest of the stuff, the way you usually do.
Well, yeah, I do. I do innings. Great pitching feats, great hitting feats. Quicksilver sluggers, guys who were prior to the time when Silver Slugger Award came into being. Hall of Famers, the unsung, unappreciated, team questions. One thing I don't do, and I didn't do, and I sort of regret it, but it would have required a separate chapter, and there really wasn't going to be enough space in the book, was umpires. I think there's an awful lot to be done on umpires.
Yeah.
You never see much about umpires in quiz books.
I remember
There's an awful lot of interesting stuff about them.
Yeah, you also had a category most of the time because fancy meeting you here.
Yeah,
like the fact that Gil Hodges and Duke Snyder were actually teammates for 6 weeks on the 63 Mets before Hodges went to Washington to manage. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Traded for Bill Dennehy.
Yeah. But he and Snyder were actually teammates on the Mets for the first 6 weeks of 1963.
Yeah, that was quite a... The Mets got the names, and the Colt 45 got the decent players. But
amazingly, the Mets were champions in 7 years later, which is incredible.
I know.
Yeah,
I a lot of it to Hodges, man. I think Hodges was a very good manager.
He was. They all love him. Like the thing with Frank Poole and Shamsky, some event here the other day, and they, with all the Mets from the '69 team who are still around are very PO that Hodges isn't in the Hall of Fame yet.
Yeah, he used that squad. I mean, he didn't. If you look at some of the players in that team, Rod Gasper, Bobby File. I mean, these guys were hardly all, even top minor leaguers, let alone guys you'd expect to pay.
Like Stengel used.
He found a place.
First bunch of years with the Yankees, like Stengel, he was like Stengel.
Yeah. Well, Stengel had better ball players.
I know, yeah.
But then Stengel tried to do it when he went to the Mets too, but it didn't work too well because he had
there's a story that I read that when the Mets got Gene Woodling. Came to the Mets in 1962. He's sitting next to Stengel during one game, and Stengel turns to him and says, "Well, this ain't like the old days, is it?"
No, it wasn't.
I think Casey had fun managing that team. I really do, though. I don't think he really found it frustrating. I think he really enjoyed it.
Yeah, but he was a salesman. He sold. He made 1 million commercials, 1 million promotions. That's what they brought him in for.
Yeah.
So, you still award points for the questions like you did in the original books?
What I did finally is, I did give points. You get credit, you get 1 point for each answer, but I also made some 5-star questions that really are tough, that probably very few people are going to get. And then you can kind of figure out your batting average at the end of the book. And anybody who claims they batted 1,000 is lying. But I don't think anybody's going to bat. I don't think I could go through my book now and get bat 1,000 on it. Because some of the questions are very difficult, but a lot of them are, pretty easy questions. One of my favorite questions is, what player was the first to collect over 1,000 RBIs, but it took him more than 1,000 at bats to hit his first home run. The question is worded a little better than that, but it's basically that, and it's the answer is kind of surprising.
Wheelie Keeler?
No.
It has to be from that. Is it from Dead Ball?
Not. No.
That's what.
I think he had. Actually, I think the question was he had more career RBI than Mantle, but he had over 1,000 at bats before he hit his first home run. And I'll give you the one clue I gave is that his first home run came off George Bradley.
George Bradley. That was in 1876.
1876. Yeah.
You guys are unbelievably.
That's not damn brothers, is it?
No, but he wasn't around that early.
Oh, okay.
It didn't take him long either to hit his first home run. But
Roscoe Barnes.
This guy played
West Barnes?
Every season prior to who?
West Barnes.
West Barnes? No. No, Barnes didn't have more RBI than Mantle. He didn't retire with more RBI than Mantle. This guy retired with more RBI than Mickey Mantle did. And at the end of his career. And it took him over 1,000 at bats to hit his first home run. Just that, that juxtaposition is so much about that is so weird.
All right, David, who was it?
Cap Anson.
I was going to say that, yeah. It was on the tip of my tongue. I thought he might have had more power than that.
He did it early in his career. And even throughout his career, it was not really a power hitter. He got a share of doubles and triples, but the only season that he really accumulated a significant amount of home runs was 1884, when anything that left the Chicago ballpark in Fair Territory was a home run. In the left field
he was there in 1884 too, right?
In 1884.
And they had a 182 right field fence, I think it was.
Yeah, and the right field fence was short. Right center was very short because of the way the ballpark was configured because of the neighborhood. And prior to 1884, any ball hit out of the park, I think unless it was in dead center, was only a double. But in 1884, they changed it. I don't know why, for 1 year only. And that the home runs in Chicago, by the Chicago
there was one that Ron Selter, the guy who wrote the book on the dead ball ballparks in the dead ball era, he put down which stadium had the most inside the park home runs. And the answer was shocking. I put down, I guess, Forbes Field was Robeson Field in St. Louis.
That is shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why that was. I
don't even know the dimensions of that place. I have to look it up.
I've never seen that. Yeah.
Hey, let me give you a shocking stat, David, and you can tell me exactly how many. How many books have you written? Shocking. Prolific, shocking stat.
Well, that doesn't. If I include co-authored and team-authored and so forth, probably around 45.
Does that include the mystery books?
It doesn't include the novels. The novels, if I include
novels, yeah.
That's another 7.
It doesn't include novels.
No, that figure. So it'd probably be over 50 if I include the fiction. I've also been part of short story anthologies.
May I ask about your writing process? Do you have 2 or 3 projects going?
At the same time? Hello?
Yes, David.
Yeah.
Yeah. You hear me?
You have a couple of projects going on at the same time? Or did you?
I do.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was working on the quiz book, and I've been also working on an update of my rules book. At the same time, I'm working on a novel that I started in 1976. I finished it, but I was never satisfied with it. Now that I've reworked it and it's moving along, and it's a very different novel than it started out as. But it's a lot of fun. I really
Another
enjoyed
question
it.
for you, David. I know there are folks out there that love the interaction with an author. If anybody is out there and wants a personally inscribed book, an autograph from you, how would they go about that to get some of your books or to communicate with you?
Probably the best way to do it would be to call me. I could give you my email address, but
Well, how about that? Yeah, your email would be best. How about your email address?
Okay, it's an old ball player, Phil Tomney, PhilTomney,
Okay.
and yahoo.com.
Beautiful. And they can communicate with you. You can tell them how to get their books. Ordinarily, they can be found on Amazon.
A lot of them are found on Amazon. A lot of them are found on eBay. The ones that are out of print.
Probably get Barnes and Noble also.
And Barnes and Noble. But
in fact, I had you the first edition of the 19th century encyclopedia before you did.
Is that right?
I found it in a Strand before it was officially published.
Okay. Yeah. So you got it in paperback.
No, I got the first hardcover. First edition was hardcover.
Well, it was hardcover. You got a hardcover coming up?
Yeah, I remember I contacted you after it came out, and you said you didn't even have a copy yet.
No, actually, at that point I hadn't. No.
Yeah, that stuff, Ralph. What David has done in the 19th century was groundbreaking. Absolutely groundbreaking.
What David did for me in the 80s, just given my mind something. It was before computers. It was before good simulation baseball games. Naturally, the computer wasn't there. And I would just love to match my batting average against the rest of the folks that read your books. It was terrific. David, how do you write? Do you set a specific time for yourself to do writing, or do you write when the spirit moves you?
No, I used to get up every morning around 6 o'clock and start. My morning hours were the best. So I generally finish around 1:30 or 2, and it doesn't work that way. I don't get up as early anymore, and I don't do as much in a day as I used to.
What happened when I found out that David was coming to the Sabre convention here in 1991. When I found that out, because I had all David's quiz books from the 70s, and we had a friend named Scott Flail, who has since dropped out of Sabre a bunch of years ago. And so we introduced ourselves to David, and it's been a terrific friendship. In fact, when David was here, we used to get this is going back a number of years, we used to get together, the three of us, and, throw stuff at each other from baseball encyclopedias.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I really missed that. We had a couple of times we had Dick Thompson with us, and
late Dick Thompson,
Dick Seaman, then who were both excellent trivia players too. And I miss that much more than I do. At Sabre conventions, the trivia is very tepid, the contests, but they used to be very, very exciting. And then our get-togethers, informal get-togethers, were really the most enjoyable of all because we really went back and dug out some stuff. and phrase questions in ways that made, the clues kind of difficult to decipher. But once you put them together, that's what I try to do too. I offer clues. I don't come right out and say, who was, what rookie in 1946 set the new Pirates home run record, season home run record. I won't ask a question that direct, but, I'll frame it in such a way that you can get to Ralph Kiner. But,
yeah,
might say, the record before him belonged to Johnny Rizzo or something like, which it did. So that was the kind of stuff we would do when we get together and ask informal.
Describe a career, not a 1-year career, but a career that was fairly lengthy. You had to identify the player.
Yeah, from the teams he played for.
So and so.
What managers he might have played under.
Yeah.
Whether he got into a World Series. Who was, name a couple teammates of his in, say, 1908 or 1910 who were pretty famous.
I had to do one of the ones I emceed. I had to do a tiebreaker because two teams tied for during the match. So I used a question name the managers who beat the Yankees in the World Series. I said two of them did it twice. The two that did it twice were McGraw and Walter Olson, and most of them did pretty well with that. But I remember one of the greatest compliments I got. I wrote about half the quiz in Milwaukee in 2001, and David after that contest asked me which were mine, and I told him a few of them. He said to me, "You SOB." I said, "I only learned from the best." Because his style, what he did, really helped me, during the years I wrote stuff.
Yeah, and you really did come up with some excellent questions. And I can almost say this is not Ed's question. This is Al's question to myself. When I was trying to answer it, it's fun. It was a lot.
Yeah, I know. I learned an awful lot from you, and you also taught me about the 19th century, which my knowledge before I met you was extremely sketchy. But you really got me into it, and when I taught baseball history at the New School for a couple of years before the strike wiped me out in '94, and the 19th century stuff, I got almost totally from you.
I thank you. I appreciate that.
Two geniuses paying compliments to each other. This is a wonderful podcast moment for me.
And when we got together in a group at the SABR conventions, everybody respected everybody. There's no yelling and nothing like that. Everybody respected everybody else's knowledge, and it was a lot of fun. It was more fun than the contest, which became very, very, hostile at times.
Competitive at best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I have a premise for you guys. I was thinking about Casey Stengel managing Billy Martin with the Oakland Oaks.
Yeah.
In 1948.
Yeah.
Or
48. Yeah.
The 9 old men.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
I had a men's senior league team, and we wore their caps.
The Oakland
back in the
blue
90s.
with the red brim. Am I right?
Yeah.
They're a beautiful cap with the oak.
They were beautiful caps.
That is
oak,
as beautiful a cap.
That acorn and
yes.
They were a fine team and
they were. Well, here's my premise: how many managers managed players in the minors and then went on to manage them in the majors?
There's a lot of them because Weaver was in the Orioles system for a number of years before they brought him in.
And Lopez was in the Cleveland system.
Al Lopez is another one.
Yeah. Ripken was a minor league manager for a long time. I guess then you could limit it to Hall of Fame players or whatever, or Also,
Yeah.
Casey in 1950 had 5 on his roster with the Yankees. Had Berra, Rizzuto, DiMaggio, Ford, and 1951. Well, that was the last year that DiMaggio and Mantle were together, but Ford wasn't there. I think
but he didn't manage those players in the minors.
Yeah, 53, he had Ford on the Yankee roster. He had Ford, Berra, Rizzuto, Mantle, and Johnny Mize. He had 5 Hall of Famers on that team.
I understand that, but
but how managed, a lot of them didn't spend very much time in the minors.
That's true. That's true. And none of them spent any time in the minors with Casey as the manager.
Billy Martin.
Right, except Billy Martin, right.
Yeah, because he managed Milwaukee, for Vec for, I think, 2 years. And they asked him, why you hired that clown? And Vec, before he went into the Marines, Stengel said, I got this catcher. I'm going to sell him to Connie Mack for much more money than he's worth. He says, how are you going to do that? He says, Stengel says, well, the scout loves this kid. So he's going to sell his kid to the scout, and the scout's going to talk to Mack, and they're going to buy him for a lot more. And when Stengel was, Milwaukee was not a front team to anybody. They were basically independent in the early 40s, and that gives Stengel credit in the book. Beckers and Recky Stengel sold quite a number of players to the major leagues after one season, much more than they were actually worth.
Yeah.
So, but he knew the scout had a weakness for this particular, type of player, and he sold it to him.
Yeah.
So the scouts would buy the rights to the player, and the scouts.
No, they consult the scouts. I mean, and he knew the scout for years.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this is what he did. He used all his old boy connections, and Stengel. Stengel couldn't remember names very well, but he was able to remember.
You remember
certain skills and use all his connections to do this.
Do this and that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure he was consulted what they were. Yeah, go ahead, David.
Speaking of the 1948 team, when Stengel managed the 9-old man, had Martin. He also, they faced the Oaks that year faced the PCL batting champion, who also played under Stengel. No, in 48, O'Doul was still managing. But
okay.
48, this guy was still an active player. He hit 385 to win the PCL batting champion.
Gene Woodling.
And then Gene Woodling, right?
Yeah,
exactly. He came to the Yankees with Stengel in 49.
Yeah. Now here's a stat. We talked about this in a podcast earlier in the week, Al. How many San Franciscoites went on to the Yankees?
A lot of them.
Dr. Brown, Gil McDougall,
Charlie Silvera, Jerry Coleman.
Right.
Well, if you go back far enough, you got Tony Lazzari and Vic Crossetti. Dominic DiMaggio went to the Red Sox because the Yankees didn't have room for him.
Right.
Yeah. Another great Stengel story was that the Indians in 1948, when they won everything, had a pitcher named Gene Bearden, who was a knuckleballer. He had a tremendous rookie season. Stengel comes to the Yankees in 1949 and tells his team, says, wait this guy out because he can't get his knuckleballs over the plate for strikes. He's totally dependent on batters swinging. And the rest of his stuff was relatively ordinary. So they did it, and Bearden never had another winning season. Was gone 3 or 4 years later.
Yeah, it's
and of course once that gets out in the majors, it goes around with the entire league.
Yeah, his knuckleball wasn't as effective. Bearden was injured early in the 48 season. It wasn't a severe injury. It wasn't one that he shouldn't have been able to come back from, certainly. But you're right. The the knuckleball never really worked for him effectively after that. I'm not sure if he did something to his hand or what
Well, he
happened.
couldn't throw strikes with it, so.
He couldn't. No, he really did want to sit and wait his knuckler out. But I remember, and he's the answer to one of the questions in the quiz book. Who's the only pitcher who on September 16th had only 14 wins, but went on to win 20 games. Morning of September 16th, he had 14 wins. He ended up a 20-game winner. The answer is Bearden. Down the stretch in 48, he was the most incredible pitcher probably in the last 100 years. I mean, there's been nobody who was as clutch and as he pitched on 2 days rest. He had only 1 day rest before he pitched in the playoff game in 48.
Yeah, he's one of the three pitchers in the 40s.
Back on Monday.
Yeah, because Ed Lutheran asked us if one of the three pitchers in the 40s that had won 20 games and never had a winning season after that, during his career. And the other two, besides Bearden, were Roger Wolf, one of the Senators knuckleballers in the 40s, and Bill Voiselle.
45.
Bill Voiselle was the third one.
Voiselle was in 44.
Yeah.
44. And Wolf was a good wartime pitcher, but never did anything. I actually saw him pitch. He got knocked out in the first inning.
I was at that double header.
Voiselle was old 99?
Yeah, 96.
Voiselle was 99. 96. Yeah.
96.
Exactly. Yeah.
He was from 96.
So it was 96, yeah.
I was at that doubleheader that Wilbur Wood started. The reason he started the second game is the Yankees got 8 runs off of him in the first inning of the first game. I think Don Newcomb in 1950 was the last pitcher that legitimately tried to pitch a doubleheader.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember it. I don't think anyone. No one's tried it since.
Today they're lucky.
Hey, you get 2 innings back to back, and you throw a block party.
Yeah.
One of my favorite questions is what pitcher saved the first game of a doubleheader and allowed no hits, and then started the second game of a doubleheader and pitched a no hitter. So we got a save and a win the same day without allowing a hit.
Whoa.
Bob Groom.
Bob Groom. That's right. Very good. Yeah. I know
I just pulled that one out. I thought of it for a few seconds. I said, I just pulled that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
1917 Browns.
It's
something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was. Maybe.
Holy God! I mean, I can't believe I got that.
Yeah.
That was a good one for sure.
No, it was 17 because he did it against the White Sox who won the pennant.
Yeah.
I know his daughter very well, and she's trying to.
David, tell us when the book is coming out.
It'll be out. I sent the final page proof back just this morning, so it should be out sometime between early March and late March.
That's when all the baseball books come out.
Yeah. It'll be out along with the stack. The other book I was working on, the revision of the rules book, an update, an expansion, including stuff that happened in 2018. Probably won't be out till June or July.
Okay. Now, what's next for you to write about?
I still do occasionally. I put a book of biographies of every 19th century player, and I knew that because for space reasons I couldn't include a lot of material that I thought was very interesting. Because there were just too many players and too many. Just as a result, it had to actually be published in 3 separate books. And University of Nebraska, who published the first 2, were so alarmed when they saw how many biographies there were that they said, "Can you cut this down?" So I made a cut that included only qualifiers. They had at least 1 year as a qualifier either in pitching or batting. And then the leftovers I did, but finally published them later on. But I still do I expand those biographies. And I'm doing one now on trying to expand it, and there really isn't much more left on it. A pitcher named Bill McGee, who totally disappeared. Nobody has even a trace of what happened to him after left his family in 1907. No explanation. Nobody ever saw him again. People who tried to track him down talked to Connie Mack, who knew him. Mack just told him, "Don't go there. Don't go there," and wouldn't say another word. And there was speculation that he was undercover operative for the FBI. There was all kinds of stuff. And his brother-in-law, his son-in-law tried for years to track him down. Never found him. I'm trying to put together as much as I can find out about him, which is not a lot. He was a pretty fair pitcher, nothing great, but I love to do biographies like that of players who really did things significant or had very interesting lives after they left baseball. And there were a lot of them in the 19th century. Baseball was, a sideline, and their real jobs were something else. But for a lot of them, baseball was, after they had their baseball careers in, they had nothing, absolutely nothing to look forward to, except drinking. And, the number of alcoholics in baseball in those years was incredible.
Yeah, people were changing their consciousness way before we young people were doing it. I mean, nothing's new on the horizon.
Except they're living longer for the most part, and they're getting paid a hell of a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, they are. But, baseball was known as a national pastime as early as the 1870s. And, kids growing up in the 70s aspired to be major league ball players. That was all they knew. They played ball every day, all day. And they knew nothing else.
Before,
acquired a trade, never acquired an education.
Before video games.
Yeah, before everything.
Yeah.
David, let me ask you a few questions about your relationship with your publishers. Do they provide an editor for you to work with, or do you choose the editor? How does that work?
What's really interesting is the editor who bought the quiz book was not the editor who I ended up working with, because he was let go. The original editor was let go. So I worked with an editor I've never really met. I talked to him on the phone. And the work is shopped out to proofreaders, and then it's finally assembled. And by the time the final product comes out, all those who have worked on it, including the author, have never set eyes on each other, never met. So, but it used to be that, I'd meet with the editors, have lunch, we'd hang out together, have a couple of drinks every now and then when I come to New York. That's all disappeared. Yeah, it's all crazy, and it's all done. Everything is put together over the internet. I got the proofread with all kinds of things I didn't understand, and then the editor explained them to me. And
because when you sent me to edit the this trivia book, you sent it on PDF files.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Rather than the hard copies going back and forth and taking a year.
Hard copy.
Yeah.
Yes. In fact, I stayed away from computers until the early 90s. And then finally I was working for a publisher. And I was working I still had a manual typewriter. And the publisher told me, this is the last hard copy book we're accepting from you. You're going to have to learn how to use a computer and do everything from now on has to come from a computer. So I had to scramble around, and I found someone who could actually teach me a computer. I was a very, very slow learner because I am very low tech. And I exasperated her to no end before she finally found a program I could use. Professional Write. It's about as basic as you could get in those days. I couldn't learn WordPerfect. I couldn't learn, any of the other programs that were going on then.
Now, all of us of this age are technologically challenged.
To put it mildly.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you seem to have adjusted pretty well, my friend.
Well, it really has helped that I have learned because I can now use the internet, and there's so much available on the internet. There is stuff that you can't find though. There's particularly things about pinch hitting, and I used to go to when I put together my original Great Baseball Feats, Facts, and Firsts. I would trace a record from the beginning in 1871 to the present day, and these were records that weren't compiled by anyone else. I would have to do it all by my hand and my eye, just looking through old encyclopedias.
Yeah, some of the early encyclopedias had a number of pinch hitting appearances.
Yeah, they did.
That you can't get that off Baseball Reference because I did the project on caddies one year. Players would play a lot of games, hardly ever got up, and I was able to cull, because the encyclopedias, the hard copies, I was able to cull the pinch hitting appearances out of the total appearances.
I know, and we missed that because they weren't entirely accurate, but they were.
I know, but it was yeah.
Nobody's done it. Nobody's done it since.
No.
And pinch runners the same way.
Yeah.
I was looking for runners were never even.
I was looking for players that had played in 100 or more games and had under 200 play appearances.
Yeah. Yeah, and there were even a couple who had around 100 games and had less than 100 plate appearances.
Yeah, well, the ultimate was Herb Washington.
The Oakland A's, I had.
Herb Washington with 104 games and no appearances.
Right. Yeah. His field percentage.
That's a record that'll go on standing
forever. Yeah, that'll never be. It can only be tied, but it'll never be broken. I think it'll never be tied again.
Well,
you guys miss the baseball
it could be.
Hard copies? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'll tell you a quick story. I was every year in the '90s. I was doing presentations on local meetings, and when the '94 strike was on, I was trying to think of something to do, unique to do in the '90 when I did the '95 presentation that wouldn't require numbers. So I took I think it was the Macmillan at the time, and went through every player, and if players were named after famous people, I made lists of those. Like there's a George Washington, me and George Washington's that ended, basically ended around 1910. Named after presidents, after other famous people, whatever it was, and I came up with a pretty decent list. Unfortunately, I don't have it anymore, and it's since I did this 20-something years ago, it's probably outdated anyway. But I did that manually just because I wanted to stay away from anything I could find on a computer.
Yeah.
So I missed the hard copies. I mean, I was buying all of them. I have most of them, but for now I buy one every 5 years or so.
Yeah, they don't.
I was going to ask you guys if you missed the Neft.
Yeah.
Baseball.
I like those better than because they went year by year.
Right.
Yeah. And they were. I miss all that stuff.
I know the information that they provided is on the internet, but it's one of the few books that you'd rather have the book than the internet.
I compiled this goes back at least 30 years. I compiled hitters with 100 strikeout seasons, and it ended in like 1987. Now if I did this now, it would take 10 years because of this, how many times batters strike out these days.
Right, And how many players qualified for the batting title last year batted under 200? Like about 30 of them.
No, it wasn't that many.
There were that. I don't. There were quite a few though.
I know one of the things I know is because I get the USA thing that weekly is that at the end of the year they have all the numbers. The White Sox had 8 players that struck out over 100 times last year, including the second baseman who struck out 217 times and led the majors. Eight players on that team struck out over 100 times last year. That's incredible.
Striking out 200 times. Could understand if it's a power hitter. Can't understand it, but you could, at least wrap your mind around it a little bit.
Yeah, another thing I did was
everything now is power. Everything is power.
Another thing I did was when I was doing that strikeout thing, I compiled a list of players that struck out over 100 times and walked less than 20. And there were quite a number of those.
Yeah, and that used to be, strike out 100 times. Actually, the last time a league leader struck out less than 100 times was 1958. And
yeah, the thing is, I did
out with the Phillies.
Yeah, the late Walt Wilson asked me one time for a list of players that led the league in both strikeouts and walks, batters, in the same season. So I fortunately, the Cy Seawolf book has that. It's very easy to get that out of the Cy Seawolf book. So I've compiled a list. Babe Ruth was on it quite often, but Babe Ruth would walk 170 times and strike out 80 times. Then you get and then you get to Adam Dunn, who had 1 year where he struck out. He walked 105 times and struck out 212 times.
Yeah.
So while compiling a 159 average, and so basically, things change, but you can't compare, Ruth doing that to Adam Dunn or some of these other guys that are playing out doing that.
David, you made a remark about a 58 Philly that struck out a lot. Who was that?
Struck out less than 100 times and led the league. He was the last to do it. Less than 100.
Who was that?
Harry Anderson.
Yeah, Philly. Yeah, he's a good Philly player for a couple of years.
He had a couple of good years. Actually, 58 it might have been his best overall season.
Yeah.
But after 58, it zoomed up. It just, there were still some low 100 winners. But by the end of the 60s, they were zooming. And now it's, if you strike out 100 times, they consider you a contact hitter.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
That
but speaking of these old encyclopedias and how much we miss them, I mean, you can go back to them as late as the 1980s, and there was so much that there was, even though they were the best of the best at the time, still was so much missing from them. Like you would, particularly in the 19th century, that's where I first noticed it. You would compile a complete roster for a team, and the team would have 84 wins and maybe 35 losses or 40 losses. And you would then take a roster, and you would see that it only added up to 81 wins and 32 losses. Where did the others come from? And I realized that some came from forfeited or protested games, and others just were unaccounted for because the players, they didn't have, the records were incomplete. Ken Samuelson, who was the editor, did the best he could with what he had. But it really wasn't until the computerization came in that we started getting really accurate records for all.
Well, Lyle Spatz said in the records committee meeting a number of years ago that if you're looking for players to balance the team and teams to balance the league up until like 1968, it was impossible.
Yeah, you couldn't.
Nobody ever did check that when they compiled these numbers that tried to balance them.
Now the official scorer has to do this at the end of every game. I don't know what they did before then.
The official scorers, in the 20s, there was a long time they had writers doing the official scoring, and the record keeping was Thank you. The record keeping was the same. The record keeping was based on the inebriation of state of inebriation of the writer who was doing it.
Yeah, yeah. It's. I'm sure you could go back over, and people have been going back over the early years of the 20th century.
Okay. Gentlemen, somebody's trying to go through to me
more.
a number of times, so I suggest we maybe we can pick this up and do it another time. This is terrific.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we've had a terrific offering. David, thank you so much. Alan, thank you so much.
Okay. And also, I don't know if you guys are interested in, but speaking with Al Anderson, we're planning to do a program on the 1952 top set. So I don't know if either of you guys want to participate in that.
I would love to. You let me know.
Okay.
I would too.
I'll set it up with him.
That was my favorite set.
And if you would include Gene Hutmaker in that.
Okay, fine. Okay, because basically, I tell you a story. Al was trying to complete that, and he's run into a roadblock with Tony Barterome because it's 5 times as much as the normal high number of that set. And the reason is that one of Barterome's relatives bought almost all those cards, the real ones, up 3 years ago, and they're scarce. And in fact, Al told me he went to some site that was to list the value of the 52 top set. You had Mantle on top, and the usual suspects. Barterome was 6th. If you could believe that.
I had that card.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'll sign off.
Bring back to all the cards that we had that were on the slopes
They're thrown out. Yeah. American Tragedy.
Absolutely.
My mother threw them out. Okay, gentlemen. I want to thank both of you for a really fascinating discussion.
Thank you, Al, for having me.
Okay.
All right.
See you next.
Be well, gentlemen.
See you next time. Okay. Bye-bye.
All right.
Will do. Bye-bye.
The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.